Alrighty, we are 1 minute after, so we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Kennedy Odell with Smart Growth America, and today we're going to have a conversation on utilizing the Opportunity Zone tool for residential development. Today's conversation is part of a summer series called Building the Stack that hosted by Locus, Smart Growth America's coalition of triple bottom line real estate developers focused on funding development that's good for communities, good for the environment, and good for folks' bottom line. Today, I would like to start off by noting that everyone's views of all of our presenters are their own, although we're happy to have them join us and excited to hear what they have to say. We've turned on closed captions, so those should be available for folks, and we are also recording this webinar. We'll answer all questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to drop them in the Q&A feature or in the chat, and we'll work through them at the end once every speaker has had the opportunity to speak. We are joined today by a number of excellent speakers, and before we get started, I will remind everyone that this webinar is available for AICP credit, should you choose to pursue that. Okie doke. So we have three speakers, as I said. The first speaker is Natalie Mason of Capital Square, who will speak to using the OZ incentive for large-scale multifamily residential projects. We have Mayor Sharetta Smith of Lima, Ohio, who will be joining us to talk about a really innovative fund structure that the city has pursued in partnership with a major Opportunity Zone funder. And we also have Robin Schabes from the Chicagoland OZ Consortium, who will be talking about sort of translating OZs and supporting Opportunity Zone education throughout the ecosystem of investors and developers. So we'll start with a brief welcome and introductions, then we'll kick it over to Natalie for a presentation on the overall Opportunity Zone incentive as well as OZ multifamily projects. Then we'll kick it to Mayor Smith to talk about the Arcturus Lima Opportunity Zone Fund, and then we'll finish out with Robin, and then a note on the potential extension of the Opportunity Zone program. And as I said, we'll wrap up with a question and answer. So if you give me one moment here, we will change over our slides and we will get going. One moment here. Okay. All righty. Okay. All right. All right. Can folks see my slides? All right. Natalie, just let me know when you'd like to move to the next one. The floor is yours.
Sure, we'll do so. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm joining you from Richmond, Virginia, which is where our headquarters is located. I'm the co-head of development at Capital Square. And we are a company, we've been around since 2012, and we specialize in tax advantage real estate investing. Kind of our bread and butter is 1031 exchanges using the Delaware Statutory Trust, DST, mechanism. We also have a private non-traded REIT, but we are a major player in the Opportunity Zone development space, and that's what I'm going to be chatting with you about today. So it's nice to meet you. Next slide. So I'll just chat quickly through kind of what are Opportunity Zones from the investor standpoint, and what that looks like, then share with you a little bit about Capital Square's development track record in Opportunity Zones and our portfolio. And then I'll give a little bit about the case study, the OZ neighborhood case study of Scott's Addition here in Richmond, Virginia. We have completed 4 developments here. We are under construction on our 5th, and we are in pre-development for a 6th project in this neighborhood. And we are not the only developer doing Opportunity Zone funded work in this neighborhood. So it really is a success story from our standpoint of how this tool can be used to create housing in really much needed parts of our country. So next slide. Again. So if you're not familiar with the history of Opportunity Zones, it was created as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. And of course, the goal was to stimulate long-term investment in lower income communities across the country. I think there's a total initially of 8,500 census tracts across the country that qualify um, in this program. And the program is incredibly advantageous for investors. So how it works is if you are an investor and you experience a capital gain, and that capital gain can come from real estate or it can come from anything. It can be selling a business. It can be selling publicly traded stock. It can be selling a painting. It can be selling a boat. It can be selling anything. If you experience a capital gain event, if within 180 days you invest into a opportunity zone fund or an opportunity zone investment, um, you can defer the capital gains tax on that initial investment through what is currently December 31st, 2026. So you get the benefit of deferring paying capital gains tax. Now, of course, when we were talking about investments back in 2018, 2019, the value of that several years of deferring your tax payment was really appealing to investors. At the moment, that portion, that benefit is not very appealing because you'd only be benefiting from about a year and a half of deferral. But again, with the original intent of this program, the idea is to incentivize investors using this deferral benefit. The second piece, which is where the real benefit is if you hold your opportunity zone investment for a minimum of 10 years, and for us, for our capital at Capital Square, we intend to hold all of our developments for 10 years so that our investors get the benefit. If you hold for the 10 years, when you do go to sell, um, in our case, a multifamily building, you have complete tax forgiveness on the appreciation of that asset over that hold period. So complete, that is a tax forgiveness benefit. It's an exceptional benefit. And I think what's been interesting watching how opportunity zones have been utilized over the last few years, how from the standpoint from the developers, you can't make at the end of the day, the real estate project or the real estate investment needs to be an attractive real estate investment. You can't take a bad real estate investment and suddenly make it good using the opportunity zone structure. But what you can do is, and what we've seen is that there may be projects, developments that are sort of on the fence, right? Maybe they underwrite, they look okay to an investor, but maybe they don't look great, but they look okay. It's a tool is really effective at getting those projects underway because you get sort of this extra boost because of the post-tax treatment, and investors are attracted to invest in these projects that may have otherwise or would not have started, but for this benefit. Next slide. So this is just to throw out some math at the outset here. This is kind of a hypothetical post-tax return comparison that we use when we present our opportunity zone investments. We think it helps investors really understand how this program works. So what you have at the top left, hypothetical, let's say you have a multifamily development project in the works, and based on the underwriting of that project, you're projecting a 12% net IRR to your investors from this deal over a 10-year hold period. So 12%, that's what the real estate asset is generating in terms of investor return. The column on the left-hand side is kind of how the flow of funds works if you're not opportunity zone, and on the right side is how it works when you do have opportunity zone. So if you have an original capital gain from the sale of an investment, again, it can be stock, you're selling your company, you're selling whatever, $1 million, tax rate between federal and state, hypothetically call it 30% would be the tax on the capital gain. In an OZ scenario, you would have to pay, you defer paying that original tax, so be roughly $300,000. In the non-OZ scenario, you're having to pay that $300,000 tax bill right away. And so when your investable amount after you pay that original tax on the left-hand side is 700,000, on the right-hand side is the full $1 million. So you're able to reinvest your full gain into a new asset. So they're sort of in a benefit right away. Now, when you apply the 12% compounded annual return over a 10-year hold period, you can see at the end of the day, kind of in the OZ scenario, you're already seeing more appreciation than in the non-OZ scenario. Now, eventually, and so then on that scenario, you in the non-OZ scenario, you have to pay tax on the appreciation of after the 10 years. So you can see that roughly 450,000 of tax that you're then paid. And then the real benefit of the OZ impact, see on the right-hand side, you're paying no tax on the appreciated value after 10 years. Now, of course, at some point you do have to pay the tax on that original investment. So you can see the 300,000 is coming out on the right-hand side. But the comparison that is really telling in simple numbers, the final value after 10 years net of taxes, you can see how advantageous that is for investors on the right-hand side. So again, this is just totally hypothetical, just to show you the numbers, how it works, and why this program has attracted tens of billions of dollars, even only after 7 years of really being implemented. Next slide. So I won't go through this. I think Kennedy is going to go through a lot about what the OZ legislation is, what the process is right now, that Congress is working through about the future of this program. But a lot of great material has come out from groups like EIG and other think tanks and industry groups of how this program has really been impactful. If you jump down to the bottom of this slide, Jay Parson, who is a rental housing economist, he has like over 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, a really fantastic housing economist. He posted recently some of the research that EIG and others have started looking to, that when you compare opportunity zones versus other housing incentive financing programs, the cost to the taxpayer of those programs for opportunity zones is much less than any other financial program out there. 26,000 per unit versus 10, 15x, 20x in some other programs. So it's a pretty effective, efficient, and less costly way to subsidize or get housing production underway. But over 300,000 residential addresses have been created as a result of this program. Next slide. So just a little bit of our track record. So our portfolio, Opportunity Zone Development portfolio, is over 2,000 units. We've delivered over 650 units, and we have over 1,000 units under construction that are all delivering this year. The gross asset value roughly of our portfolios is close to 750 million. Because all of our opportunity zones are in urban locations, we've also delivered a lot of ground floor retail as part of our developments. We're in five locations currently around the country, and we have not only raised, but we have deployed over $250 million of OZ equity since 2019. And of course, we capitalize all our developments with construction financing as well. So we've raised quite a bit of debt. So we've bringing over 700 million in investment to these neighborhoods. We're very proud of. Next slide. Here's our footprint. So we're headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We have a multifamily portfolio that covers all the Sun Belt, all the way through Texas into the West Coast. We have over 15,000 multifamily units in our portfolio, but from a development standpoint, we have chosen to stay closer to home. So we're in Richmond, Raleigh, Charleston, Knoxville. We look at opportunities more in the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast because that's closer. We have more boots on the ground for development. Next slide. just to share quickly few projects that we've delivered. Inc., Viv, and then you'll see on the next slide, Jim. Our first three opportunity zones are in the neighborhood of Scotts Addition. And you can see from the equity raises, these were sort of smaller bite-sized projects, I like to call them, between 50 and 80 units each building. We actually operate them all as one property, but they're three different projects. And we have delivered those, we have stabilized them, and most notably, we have refinanced those developments. And if you go to the next slide, the beauty of the refinancing for our investors is that when we go to refinance the property, we take out our construction loan with a permanent loan. And in all cases, the permanent loan is larger than the construction loan. So we have net proceeds from the refinancing, and we've been able to distribute those funds to our investors as a return of capital. And the reason that's really good for investors in the Opportunity Zone program is because that becomes a source of funds for them to pay their deferred tax. So when you're able to refinance and give back some return of equity, that's a source of funds for these investors to pay their deferred tax, which the investors likes because it means that they don't have to go find another source of funds for that. Otis down on the right, that's our fourth project in Richmond, Virginia, 350 units. You can see that we're starting to get bigger and bigger equity raises as we've become a more mature company. And this CoStar actually named this project multifamily project of the year. So we're very proud of that. Next page, please. So here are developments under construction, and this kind of shows how we ventured into other cities. So on the left-hand side, just this month, we're delivering a hotel on Upper King Street in Charleston. So you may say to yourself, King Street, I thought that was like the place to be. Well, Upper King Street has, been chronically underinvested in, but is now seeing a lot more funds come into that corridor. And we're really pleased to open this hotel in Charleston. Just over the last 3 days, we've been featured in Southern Living and in Travel and Leisure. So if anyone has an excuse to go to Charleston, please stay at this new hotel. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see this was our largest equity raise to date, over 52 million. This is a 297 unit project in downtown Raleigh to the southwest of the convention center. We just delivered that project and we are starting lease up there. I love this project as a case study for opportunity zones because right across the street is a 12 to 15 acre public housing site with the Raleigh Housing Authority. So imagine 12 acres, but there's only 120 units on there. So very low density housing stock on this site that's been there since the 60s or the 70s. And Raleigh Housing Authority is going through a master plan redevelopment of this site, bring more density, mixed income. And they are so pleased that we've delivered this project across the street because we're bringing retail, we're bringing more people to this neighborhood, and it's going to help them capitalize their redevelopment of this housing authority site. Next. Our next project, bottom left, is another development in Richmond, 352 units, also in the same Scotts Addition neighborhood. We're delivering that towards the end of this year. And then Knoxville, down on the right, is 348 units. I wish we had an image of this turned the other way. So if you're familiar with Knoxville, this is across the river from Neyland Stadium, from the university. And so this is South Knoxville. So it's an opportunity zone because there has not been much investment south of the river in Knoxville. So now there is more action happening here. And the city has actually received significant grant funding, federal funding, I think, and state funding to build a pedestrian bridge that links the university area with South Knoxville. So I think a lot's happening here, and we're excited for this project to open over the next few weeks. Next slide. So just to highlight, because I think the mayor is going to chat a little bit about a specific neighborhood. I like sort of honing in on a specific neighborhood and kind of what the OZ impact has been, because there's a lot of stuff you read in articles and then in the news, but there's some neighborhoods that really tell the story of what's actually happening on the ground. So next slide. Um, so if you're not familiar with Richmond, Virginia, it's where we're headquartered, but it's the state capital of Virginia. We have quite a few Fortune 1000 companies in our city, which is actually a lot for a city of our size. Richmond has never been a high growth market, but it's always been sort of a reliable slow growth market. It gets ranked as in sort of a lot of great categories. There's sort of a craft brewery scene here. It's now sort of more and more on the radar for leisure travel. So Richmond is a market where we have liked to invest both for acquiring multifamily, but also for building multifamily. So if you go to the next slide, so while we view Richmond as a great place to invest regionally, not all parts of the city are receiving equal investment or haven't received much investment. So here's just a quick map. You can see I'm sure many people on the call are familiar with going to OZ maps in different states and zooming in to see, okay, which neighborhoods are qualified, which are not. When you look at this map, there's a lot of different OZ neighborhoods around Richmond, and we've looked at opportunities in a lot of them. Where we have focused our development is in the Scotts Addition neighborhood. If you see that little blue interstate sign that says 195 on there. That blue neighborhood is the census tract that Scotts Addition neighborhood is in. So you can kind of see just from looking at the map, it's very centrally located. Um, it's it's close to downtown Richmond. It's close to the interstates where you can get to job centers around the region. The reason it's an opportunity zone, however, is because it's formerly industrial and warehouse and light industrial neighborhood. Has sort of a lot of surface parking lots, vacant warehouses, and just through the years hasn't received a lot of investment. It started to change in 2005 because the neighborhood received a historic designation. So some local developers came in and started rehabbing warehouses into things like a brewery, or started converting warehouses into an adaptive reuse apartment building. But it really wasn't until 2016, 2017, 2018, and fueled by Opportunity Zone legislation, that groups like ours came in and built really more meaningful, large institutional quality apartment buildings. Next slide. So this is our portfolio today in this neighborhood. To the top right of the screen, that's downtown Richmond. We have a total of 6 developments, over 1,200 units, either delivered, under construction, or to be delivered. Again, over 40,000 square feet of retail. We've had a lot of things like coffee shops, hair salons, plant stores come into our buildings. And we have raised and brought 125 million of equity to this neighborhood. And I can tell you very confidently that if it was but for this legislation, these projects would not have been built. So the fact that we've been able to bring this much housing to this part of Richmond, I think is a testament to the program. Next slide. Now, a lot of the criticism around opportunity zones is no one really knows how it's been used and to what extent and which neighborhoods and who's tracking what. So we have, for all of our opportunity zone developments, we have hired a third-party consulting firm, FTI Consulting, to do comprehensive economic impact reports on all our developments. So this is just a little screenshot of a couple of highlights, but we have all of our impact reports on our website. So I encourage anyone to go check them out. I think what's great about these reports is it shows in very real numbers how many jobs have been created from these projects, how much state and local taxes are being generated, what are the full-time jobs. So we willingly do these reports because we think it helps tell our story better. But hopefully with however Opportunity Zones 2.0 evolves, it will become standard for developers to report on these things, because I think most developers out there want to report on these things. Next slide. So we'll just flip quickly through these. This is one of the Scott's Addition developments. Next slide, called Inc. This is Viv, which is right across the street. And this is Jim, which is adjacent to it. Next slide. So I like showing this because this is a photograph of one of our development sites in Scott's Addition. It was a vacated warehouse that hadn't really been touched in years and was not being used. And if you go to the next slide, this is what it now looks today. So this is an almost 3-acre site or 2.5-acre site turned from that underutilized warehouse to now we have 350 housing units. Next slide. A few streets over, if you see the surface parking lot on the left and the surface parking lot on the right, and then you see the group of warehouses in the middle, those are 3 non-contiguous sites that are our next project it's currently under construction, set to deliver. It's called Chasen. So I like showing this image because with any of our opportunity zone develops, we have not displaced housing. It's not like we're tearing down old housing to build new housing. In most cases, they're surface parking lots, and in some cases, it's sort of vacated or underutilized warehouses. Next slide. And this is our project Chasen mid-construction. Next slide. And this is a rendering of what hopefully it will look like later this year. So just to wrap up, because I think I'm coming in on my time, just to give you a sense of how we present to our investors new opportunities, here's sort of kind of our intro slide to how we talk about our next project. So this is what we call Opportunity Zone Fund 9. This is also in Richmond. This is going to be a multifamily plus hotel development that we hope to start construction on in the first quarter of next year. Next slide. So here's just sort of a description of 320 units, how much parking, we'll have amenities and retail associated with this development. So looking forward to this OZ program being extended so we can deliver more housing. So I'll stop there, Kennedy.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pause our share as we hop over. Thank you, Natalie. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the mayor's presentation here and we will get right back into it. All right. Mayor, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I want to start out by thanking both Locus and Smart Growth America for this invitation and hosting this very important conversation. As has been stated, I am Sharetta Smith. I'm the mayor of Lima, Ohio. We are a small city in Northwest Ohio, actually located at the intersection of US 30 and Interstate 75 between the cities of Dayton and Toledo, Ohio. And I'm sure you've heard of Columbus. We're about an hour and a half from Columbus. But we serve majorly a largely rural region. So we are the urban city in a 10-county rural area. And so over the next 10 minutes, I'll be focusing on how we're leveraging opportunity zones to unlock housing in our downtown, especially in markets that traditional capital often overlooks. Next slide, please. So as I stated, Lima, we are the micropolitan hub, and so we're home to about 36,000 people, but we serve again as the commercial and healthcare hub for 3 largely rural counties. We certified 3 opportunity zone tracts in 2018. And in these tracts, they were areas with poverty rates that were topping 20% of the median income, which is well below our state median income by almost $20,000 for the state average median income. Like many rural areas, the city of Lima, we've seen a significant population decline in manufacturing jobs as well, which again has made the attracting private capital an uphill battle. When the Jobs Act 2017 first came out, I was not mayor at the time. I served as the previous mayor's chief of staff, and we immediately wanted to prepare our city to be able to compete for these opportunity zones designation, because we saw it as being a game changer. Next slide, please. And so what we found is, we worked with a impact zone investor out of Boston by the name of Arcturus Impact Investors. And we were first introduced to Arcturus Impact Investors through our State Department of Development, who hosted a roadshow. And again, for us, we were primarily looking for residential development, because one of the things with respect to our area is that we are not only small in population, we're also small in our footprint. Our city, our boundaries are only 13 square miles. But in those 13 square miles, we have over 1,200 vacant lots, and even more properties that are deficient in taxes. But we found that making OZ deals work have been difficult in rural areas, to speak frankly. First is the idea of capital flight. We know that only 77% of OZ equity is actually reaching rural tracts. But also we have a limited developer pool. And so here, there's very little local developers that have the capacity to carry the soft costs to make projects work. And then the other challenge is a deep appraisal gap. And so our median home value is roughly $66,000. And there's also the lingering skepticism about transparency. And so all of these combined together have made made us as a public partner have to step up and de-risk those early stage, just really hesitancy, and embark some guardrails. And so we had to get creative on attracting an OZ fund. To tackle those, we applied for a call for a request for proposals from Arcturus Impact Investors. And in that proposal, we were looking for public-private partnerships to seed $5 million as a first loss capital subordinate loan that would unlock $20 million in private OZ equity. So we were unable to secure, that capital from the private sector, again, for many of the reasons that I talked about previously. So one of the things we did was we got creative, and the city, through the support of our city council, and also in partnership with our chamber foundation, the city provided $5 million as that first loss capital. And then we stacked that capital with CRA abatements, have the ability to use state historic tax credits and some other local grants to fill those gaps, to bring in projects. And so in addition to that, because we were concerned about equity, we were concerned about being sure that these projects actually brought jobs and were able to maintain affordability, we created a advisory committee where we're have guardrails where 20% of the units have to remain affordable to 80% AMI. And there's also a construction wage floor of $18 an hour for construction jobs. Next slide, please. In addition to that, we're using some of those existing, I might be ahead. Am I ahead?
All right, there you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. And so, again, we used the $25 million as the first loss capital for the loan. And we are looking at 2 specific projects right now. And again, using those existing vacant parcels. One of the projects is a Park It neighborhood that is the first entering neighborhood from our downtown. And we're looking at cottages and shared green space around the neighborhood. Also looking to target young professionals and downsizing seniors into this neighborhood. What also makes this neighborhood attractive is that not only the proximity to the downtown, but over the last 5 years, we've been able to see roughly $60 million of investment in our downtown outside of the opportunity zones. And so this neighborhood will be a rock's throw from a new downtown amphitheater, as well as our 2-year college, Rhodes State College, has recently moved into our downtown as well. And we also have 2 other new mixed-use developments, one Spring in Maine, and the other is the Central District, which provides opportunities for some of our local entrepreneurs to move from home-based businesses to storefront businesses. Next slide, please. The other project is an emerging project, which will be a downtown adaptive reuse building. It is a historic 3-story office building. And for this building, we're planning a ground floor and entrepreneur space with loft type housing up above. And then an additional housing on what is now a surface parking lot. And so it will add residents as well as evening foot traffic into our downtown. We're also looking to bring in more coffee shops and cafes as well. Right now, those projects are in the feasibility phase where we are looking at preservation studies and performing the due diligence, interviewing existing tenants in those buildings as well. We've also been able to add to the stack brownfield funding that we were able to receive from our state as well to do some of the pre-development. Next slide, please. So some early lessons, like I said, we started this back in 2017, and we are still, we have these 2 emerging projects where, the contracts have been signed for the sale of the property, but we've yet to break ground. From a small city perspective, I would say that we would not have been able to get this far had we not decided to seed the first dollar to de-risk the pre-development. So I'm very grateful that we had the public support to do so. But the second part of that was the pipeline of project-ready sites. Having a pipeline of sites that are ready to go, as well as businesses that are either ready to sell or, ready to engage with the investors that are looking for that additional capital to make projects work has been very important. We are also learning the importance of putting the impact in writing in terms of the affordability, the wages, and the reporting. One of the things that attracted us to Arc'teryx Impact Investors is that their program already has those things built in, much that we heard Natalie talk about before. They work with ICIC to develop what those key metrics will be for the success of their projects. The other thing that we've been able to do is leverage our hometown institutions. And so our land bank, the land that we're using for the cottage homes was already in our land bank. Our advisory board that I talked about includes representatives from local banks as well as realtors. And our Chamber of Commerce has been very helpful as well to bring that community voice. Again, being a smaller town and having an outside investor come in, there's sometimes individuals are leery of that, but having these local voices sit on the advisory board and be able to talk about how this program, benefits not just those specific projects, but the entire city have been extremely helpful. Next slide, please. won't get into, what's happening now, because there's another presentation about that. But I will say that we are one of the communities that is extremely excited about the expansion of the deadline, since it has taken us so long to get started. I will also say that, here in the state of Ohio, we've had some local legislation as well, looking at how can we add additional state OZ opportunities with the federal OZ opportunities. And earlier this year, our state legislature expanded the pool of investments that are eligible on the state level for OZ tax incentives as well. And then I will just end by saying that, opportunity zones, are not a silver bullet, meaning they won't solve, all of our, housing issues or the ability to attract capital for those projects. But I think when local government, mission-driven investors and community voices roll in the same direction, that these tools can spark outsized impact in rural America. And with that, I thank you and I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much, Mayor. All right. All right, and then we're going to move on to our last presenter, Robin. One moment. Present. Okie doke. All right, Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kennedy, and hello to everybody. Really happy to be part of this conversation with our panelists. So just as a reminder, I'm Robin Schabes, and I'm the director of what is called the Chicagoland OZ Consortium. So for my part of this panel discussion, I'm going to be talking about a collaboration model that we're using here in the Chicago area to help support OZ deals. Next slide. So in addition to talking about what that model is, I also wanted to share with the audience some examples of local residential development projects that have happened within our footprint that have utilized the Opportunity Zone tool. And then also wanted to share an example of a capital stack as it relates to a LIHTC plus OZ deal. So we'll be talking about all of that in my short time together. Next slide. But first, I wanted to provide some context about opportunity zones within the state of Illinois. And as you can see from this slide, Illinois has 300 plus opportunity zones. 56%, or 183 of those zones, are located in a relatively small geography, comparatively speaking to the rest of the state. And they are divided between the city of Chicago with 135 opportunity zones and Cook County, suburban Cook County, which includes 48 zones. And the map that you see on the left side with the dotted red line, that represents the boundary of Cook County, and the blue shaded area represents the boundaries of the city of Chicago. And I will say that when the opportunity zones were getting created within certainly this part of the state, absolutely working through the local municipalities and working with the governor, we absolutely did stay true to the intent of the legislation. Next slide. I also wanted to give some context around this collaboration model that we're going to be talking about. Obviously, the impetus was the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And the idea here incubated actually out of a community development financial institution called the Chicago Community Loan Fund, which is where I actually work. And the idea was, how could such a large geography, so many opportunity zones, what would be the best way to help facilitate getting access to this equity capital without stepping on each other's toes, but really making it a little bit more streamlined instead of 50 plus, 20 plus, 30 plus entities all trying to have the same conversations. So that was the idea, the impetus behind the creation of this collaborative model. Next slide. So this is a slide, maybe a little hard to see depending upon the size of your screen, but we have myriad members. We range between 28 members to 30 plus members, depending upon each given year. But the important part to show here is the representation that we have in this conversation. So we have all of the community economic development agencies focused on the city of Chicago and suburban Cook are at the table. We have almost all the CDFIs who are operating within our footprint are part of the table. We have gotten great philanthropic support from several foundations, and some of them are also members of the consortium. And then lastly, we have developers, other practitioners, and nonprofit entities, all are members of the consortium. Next slide. So we are mission focused, and we have 3 core roles that we play. And when the consortium was being established, very early on, the members decided that rather than go after trying to create an OZ fund to manage, that would make more sense for our collaborative model to instead serve as a matchmaker. So that is one of the key roles that we play. We understand and develop relationships within our footprint to know what kinds of community development projects are in the pipeline or coming into the pipeline, what kinds of businesses are interested in seeking out opportunity zone financing, and for feasible potential opportunities, then trying to match them with interested OZ investors. So it takes a lot of relationship building to make all of that work. The other 2 core roles that we play include education around the tool and one-on-one technical guidance, as well as we've created a couple of technical assistance programs. But we have produced a variety of webinars, fireside chats. We have a great amount of collateral material. A lot of it is very easy to understand. And the goal is to try to make sure that we are democratizing access to this tool so that everybody who is interested understands what it's about and could go down that pathway. And they have somebody that they can go to help them along that pathway, i.e. the consortium. And then lastly, as you all know, we've talked a little bit about it right now. There is not one single place we can all go to understand what is happening in the OZ realm. And it's great to hear about all of the funds and developers who are producing their own impact reports. So for our footprint, we have developed so many relationships. We really want to understand how the tool is being utilized in our footprint. So we collect anecdotal data, qualitative type of data, in lieu of eventually getting that transparency information, hopefully through the next round of legislation. Next slide. So in terms of the ecosystem impact, when we started, when the consortium was created, as you can imagine, with many community development players in a geography the size of Chicago and suburban Cook County, that was very distributed, lots of, no coordination, lots of different folks, lots of different voices trying to move a conversation forward. And since we've been in business, we launched in 2020, and since we've been in existence, we have actually created now a coordinated ecosystem whereby both locally, regionally, and nationally, the consortium is now recognized as that go-to place to learn about what's happening with OZs in our footprint, to understand what pipeline projects there might be, to get information, to coordinate, to collaborate in many different kinds of ways. And the goal is to continue this model into the future and have increased impact as a result of that collaborative model. Next slide. So this is a map. It's not the entire city of Chicago, but this map is a graphic representation of what we have learned through that anecdotal information that we have gathered. We know that more than $300 million of private investment, total project cost, has been invested into projects and businesses within the city of Chicago. And that translates into more than 1 million square feet of developed space, new space that has been created, or space that has been adaptively reused, underutilized manufacturing spaces that have now been put into new uses. We know that over 600 dwelling units have been created across all income levels, affordable, middle market. And we have seen myriad types of investors interested in the kinds of projects that we have in our footprint. And that's anywhere from friends and family, seed stage capital for businesses, family offices, institutional funds, banks, and everything in between. So there's quite a variety of investors who have already invested within our footprint. Next slide. So these are some images of different residential projects that have been the recipient of OZ equity. And a couple of things that I wanted to point out just from this very quick slide. You can see just from the renderings and from actual photographs that the types of projects in Chicago have been very varied in terms of OZ equity. So you have some of your traditional courtyard style buildings, residential buildings that have been the recipient of OZ equity, or traditional older mixed use kinds of projects with upper story residential on commercial corridors. And then you have new construction that is undergoing construction right now or has already been developed. And you can see that these projects, and these are not all the projects within our footprint, just a sample of some of the residential projects. But you can see that we're seeing OZ investment used for low density as well as medium density residential projects. Some of those projects have mixed use or commercial uses on the ground floor. Next slide. So this project I like to talk about a lot because I think it's a great impact example of OZ equity really impacting at the neighborhood level. And I like to talk about this project as well because it's one of those projects that has combined opportunity zone financing with low income housing tax credits. And sometimes, at least in our footprint, developers sometimes think that maybe you can't combine those two types of incentives together. You can. It's not necessarily the easiest transaction, but of course it's doable. And we have a couple of projects in addition to this one that has utilized LIHTC with OZ. But in this particular case, you can see the capital stack. You know, it's certainly financing lasagna, some folks here say, but a lot of different sources went into making this project a reality. And that just gives you an example of some of the incentives that were used to bring this project to bear. It is a veterans preferenced housing project, and it was developed on 16 long-term vacant lots within a neighborhood in the city of Chicago. So this development was an addition to development that this particular community developer was already working on. It's now this campus that has transformed 6 blocks in an otherwise really under-resourced area, bringing all kinds of resources to the table. Community playgrounds, outdoor recreation areas. And this is a supportive housing project. So it's serving veterans and their families with family-sized units at income level that ranges from 15% to 60% AMI. So really, truly a very impactful project in our footprint. Next slide. And I put this slide up because you saw all the different sources of financing that made the Hope Manor Village project a reality. Some of the developers who are doing residential projects in our footprint are combining OZ financing with CPACE financing or property assessment, the property assessment reduction incentive, depending upon if you're doing an affordable housing project. In some cases, Chicago has enterprise zones. So if your project happens to be located in both an opportunity zone and an enterprise zone, then there are certainly benefits attached to construction for those types of projects. And then here in Chicagoland, as I'm sure in several communities represented by the audience participating today, tax increment financing. So lots of different ways to mix and match OZ financing with other types of incentive programs. Next slide. And I like to show this slide a lot because if you track information like Novogradac is always putting out for the funds that they track. They don't track all funds across the United States, just a subset of funds. But you can see the trajectory of this tool has consistently been on an upward path. And it is absolutely true that the rate of OZ investment has definitely outpaced other place-based incentives at similar stages. And I think this is an important point to make. I'm a longtime community development practitioner. I have worked for large municipalities, small municipalities, nonprofits, for-profits, and I've had the chance to really see in action and intersect directly with a lot of community development incentive programs and the timelines attached to those programs. And one of the many benefits of the OZ tool is its implementation flexibility, the relatively quick pace at which you can get that initial capital deployed, and the fact that you can pair it with other community development incentives. So from my perspective, I think it's a good addition to the community development toolbox, and am really looking forward to seeing where enhancements to the legislation will be coming down the pike as the bill is making its way through Congress for the enhancement of the OZ tool. Next slide. So I'm going to stop there, but if anybody on this webinar is interested in learning more about the consortium, or you want to hear more about the projects that are in our footprint, or you want to take a look at some of our collateral materials, which is all free and available from our website, I encourage you to give me a call or send me an email. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much, Robin. And I'm going to sort of close us out here with our last bit. So folks, hang on one moment while we make that transition. All righty. A number of our speakers today have talked about legislation and a potential extension, so we wanted to provide a brief note on that. So there's a comprehensive tax legislation that's currently under consideration in the US Congress that would potentially extend the Opportunity Zone program. It's important to note that this is under active negotiation, but the Opportunity Zone program, an extension of it, is currently in the bill text as it stands now. So were the bill to be voted on in its current form, which seems somewhat unlikely, it would be passed into law. And so we would really encourage folks to both stay apprised, watch the news. There'll be lots of reporting around this package and sort of untangling what's actually in here. And to sort of stay in touch with Smart Growth and Locus, where we can help brief you and keep you in the loop. But we want to talk a little bit about what the current legislation includes, and then move from there. So first, it would have a new designation cycle, meaning, and there's a somewhat strong partition between the first cycle and the second cycle. Functionally, the incentive would designate a new universe of OZs with very similar qualifications as the first round, but there'd be a redesignation process done for the next cycle of the incentive. Again, many of these may overlap, but they will rerun the process. That's partially due to some minor criticisms around certain qualifying tracks no longer meeting the sense of the original program, or a few marginal tracks that were designated in a way that folks didn't feel matched the goals of the program. But overall, as many of our speakers have said, the vast majority of OZs had a poverty rate over 20% and were very much in line with the sort of fundamental intent of the designation process. So there'll be those modifications and a new designation cycle. There will also the next second round would run from 2027 to 2033 as currently drafted. There are members of Congress who are pushing for permanence, where this would be a longer term extension, sort of in perpetuity, until the next tax bill is considered. But that the current period is 2027 to 2033. There are some targeted rural enhancements. So for Mayor Smith and others who come from communities like Lima, stay tuned. There are numerous pieces of that, so I won't go into too much detail, but they encourage future or further investment given the somewhat limited uptake and the unique challenges in rural geographies. And then there is an expansion to ordinary income up to $10,000 per taxpayer. Currently, the the thing that you can put in OZs is capital gains, and that you get your tax deferral on, but there's a discussion around expanding that universe, which would basically open up what could go into opportunity zones beyond what it currently is. So that conversation's ongoing. There's currently a cap. That cap may not stay in place, but that's something to watch sort of in the coming weeks. And then lastly, as many of our speakers talked about, there are reporting requirements in this version of the bill. I think it's important to note for folks who follow this program closely that reporting requirements were included in the original effort with opportunity zones, but fell out due to a somewhat nerdy procedural thing that happens down here in Congress about eligibility rules. So those reporting requirements are written in such a way that stakeholders anticipate they will be able to stay in the current package, although that does remain to be seen as sort of the final bill details come forward. We will pause here for a moment. We got a good little bit of time here to answer some questions, so I'm going to open the Q&A feature. So I'm going to start with the first question I see here, which was, how well have opportunity zones been paired with LIHTC and new markets? Robin, you were speaking to this a little bit with that deal you just spoke about, but I would give that question to everybody, but maybe Robin, you to start with.
I'm sorry, yes. What was the question, the specific question again?
How well have opportunity zones been paired with the low-income housing tax credit and new markets tax credit?
So, of course, I can speak to our footprint. We know that 3 projects within Chicago have paired LIHTC with OZ. Oftentimes, it is the LIHTC investor, the bank also, or related entities making the OZ investment, and that's one of the things that we've seen in the 3 projects that we are aware of. I think it's sufficient to say that you can pair it with LIHTC. And if you look at some of the models that are out there, and if you go to the Economic Innovation Group's website, they have profiles and case studies of several projects. There are examples, not just in Chicago, but there are examples in other parts of the country as well.
And I think that also stands to the point that there are more complex deals and simpler deals. And certainly some of utilizing different pieces may make deals more complex, but doesn't make them impossible. Natalie, I saw you come off mute, so didn't want to cut you off there.
Yeah, I was just going to share as a practitioner in this space where we do not or have not historically taken advantage of other incentive programs. I will say the beauty of opportunity zones is that it is what we would call a by right program. So to take advantage of opportunity zone capital, you do not need to go through a regulatory process. You do not need to submit applications. You do not need to ask permission. You do not need to hire a lot of consultants and so forth to go through some sort of application process. So I think the reason there's been such a huge adoption of this program and tens of billions already invested just after a period of a few years is because it is a by right program, and you literally just have to follow the rules. And if you follow the rules, then you get the benefit. I think even though it's great that it can be paired with other programs, and certainly should be in a lot of cases where that can help fill financing gaps. I think what's great about this program is that it doesn't rely on a lot of those bureaucratic processes that make it hard for developers to access those other types of programs like new market tax credits, LIHTC, and so forth.
Okay. Another viewer asks, what do you think has kept 1/3 of opportunity zones out of participation for the past 7 years? Mayor, I think you talked about some of the unique challenges with rural opportunity zones.
I think one of them is attracting a fund. Creating the actual zone, quite frankly, was easy because it was all about census data. And so, and I can only speak specifically to the state of Ohio. We worked with our Department of Development to create an opportunity zone prospectus and shop that prospectus to investors that were out there looking to deploy capital into zones across the country. So the fund that we're working with, they're investing in Lima, but they're also investing in Erie, Pennsylvania, and some other places throughout the Midwest.
Okay. And Natalie had to hop off, but we'll follow up if anyone has any questions specifically for her. Thank you, Mayor. Next, Mary Jo here asked a question about how would local municipalities become aware of OZ projects? I'm not aware of any in my community, but I think they could be happening. This is one of the fundamental questions around reporting requirements. Basically, we've heard cases where certain folks say, I don't have any opportunities on investments. And it's because there is this current partition between what's known, what's public, and what's actually happening. One of her follow-up questions was, do investors tend to keep their use confidential? Robin, do you want to kind of talk about like how you've navigated figuring out what's happening in Chicagoland?
Sure. And I would say to anybody who's interested in wanting to learn about what might be happening in their footprint, there's a lot of clues you can get, right? There's a lot of places you can go. Certainly your city or community's economic development or community development department is likely aware of projects that are happening in the pipeline. You could certainly talk to any CDFIs if you have CDFIs within your footprint. Your state departments of economic development or commerce are good places to go. But we gather the data in our footprint through the relationships we built. And I will say that it has taken a good amount of effort to develop those relationships, to uncover what's happening in our footprint. And of course, we have this collaborative model. So we very much rely upon the members of our collaborative to help guide us to where we might need to go to find out and uncover the pipeline projects. But there are lots of ways in which you can go about doing that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions offline as well if you want to dive deeper into those details.
The next question's for the mayor. Someone said, I'd love to see a photo of the cottage style infill project. I have not seen much of this in the Midwest, so excited that it's happening. Did you find it difficult to get this new style of housing approved, and was there any pushback?
No, because our zoning code is very relaxed. You don't hear that much nowadays, but we are one of the communities. We don't have form-based code. We still are under the Euclid pyramidal-based code system, and so as long as it's single-family or multi-family residential, the outside construction or appearance is not even legislated. So no, we did not have any issues. I cannot show a photo yet though, but
Yeah. Someone said, I hear the term rural, but I see good sized communities here. What is the term rural like intended to mean? So I think that we were trying to get a spread, right? So we had our folks who were doing the major multifamily residential development, sort of what Natalie does, which I think folks think of as like the quintessential OZ investment. That's like sort of what gets the most publicity. But we wanted to have the mayor join us, who with 39,000 people, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, that's not a very big geography, rural sort of by the traditional metrics used by USDA. So that's kind of what we were intending. Chicago, not rural for sure. I won't. I don't think Robin will fight me on that one. But that's kind of what we were meaning here. So it's a good point that definition does vary depending on who asks different stats, or basically what reference point you're using. Someone said, how can we find out where opportunity zones are in our state or county? So there are a number of maps online. What I will say is a note of caution that those boundaries may be changing. So those are any map you'd find. There's a good one on the Economic Innovation Group's website. And those maps are for the current period that ends 2026. So if there is a refresh, as we think there may be some slight adjustments. So don't get too committed to a new project, but it gives you a sense of the types of tracks that were designated in that first round. Okay. And then I'm just going to see if I missed any questions in the chat here. We will reshare some of the links that we've shared in our follow-up materials. So for those who are attending, you'll get versions of the slide deck as well as some of the links we were dropping in the chat here. So thank you on that front. I think that is almost every question. I saw one last come in. active OZ funds across the country. Robin, I might ask, are you aware of any sort of, or the mayor, any standing lists of active OZ funds?
Yes, certainly. I mentioned one of them. If you go to Novogradic's website, Novogradic is a national accounting practitioner type of entity, and they collect a lot of data. But one of the things that they track are qualified opportunity funds who are willing to share that information with them. So it's not all of the QOFs that exist, but it's a great start. And if you go to Novogradic's website, click onto their Opportunity Zone Resource Center, and you'll easily be able to find the information.
Okay, perfect. I want to move us here, just make sure we have a moment for our last slide before folks sign off. So one great way to stay in the loop with what's happening with opportunity zones is to consider joining Locus. As I said at the top of the call, Locus is an organization that's investors, developers, and other stakeholders focused on developing triple bottom line real estate deals. And we would love to have you. We have discounted membership prices through the summer, and we provide monthly briefings on the current status of tax legislation, as well as other efforts to support transit-oriented development, broader community revitalization, brownfields work, and zoning reform. So if you're interested, shoot us an email. But last thing, don't miss our next Building the Stack webinar. We're going to be focusing on building small scale and missing middle housing, and we'd love to have you join us for that as well. That'll be June 26th at 3 p.m. Thank you all for joining us, and we will send around some follow-up information. Thanks all.